In 1961, a scientist at Yale University asked ordinary people to do something simple. Flip a switch. That's it. Just flip a switch. On the other side of that switch was another human being, screaming, begging them to stop. 2 out of 3 people flip it anyway, all the way to the end. This is not a story about monsters. It's a story about you. So let's get into it. A year earlier in Jerusalem, a former Nazi official named Adolf Eichmann sat trial for his role in the Holocaust. He hadn't pulled a single trigger. He organized train schedules, paperwork, and logistics. His defense was almost pathetic in his simplicity. I was just following orders. Watching all of this from New Haven, Connecticut, was a young psychologist named Stanley Milgram. And Milgram had a question that most people were too afraid to ask aloud. Was Eichmann telling the truth? Not as an excuse, as a fact. Could ordinary people, no sadists, no psychopaths, just regular people, be talked into doing something horrific, one step at a time? He decided to test it, not with Nazis, with people like your neighbor, your co-worker, yourself. Milgram recruited ordinary volunteers on the street, teachers, engineers, for what he called a study on memory and learning. $40 for an hour of their time. Here is what they were told. One of them will be the teacher. The other will be the learner, strapped into a chair in the next room wired to an electric shock machine. The teacher's job was simple: read out word pairs. Every time the learner got one wrong, the teacher flipped a switch, and the shocks got stronger. 15 volts, 30, 75, all the way to 450. Here's the part almost nobody knows. The learner was an actor. There were no real shocks, but the teacher, the actual subject of the experiment, didn't know that. As far as they knew, they were hurting people, and they kept going. Whenever the teacher hesitated, a man in a lab coat, the experimenter, would say one of 4 things: always calm, never threatening. Please continue. The experiment requires that you continue. It is absolutely essential that you continue. You have not other choice. You must go on. No threats, no punishment for stopping, just a quiet voice repeating that they should keep going. At 120 volts, the actor began to rant in pain. At 150, he shouted that his heart was bothering him and demanded to be let out. At 270, he screamed in agony. At 300, he pounded on the wall and stopped answering altogether. And still, the man in the lab coat said, "Please continue." Before running the experiment, Milgram asked psychiatrists to predict the results. Their estimate, maybe 1 in 1,000 people will go all the way to 450 volts. Only a handful of genuine sadists. The actual number who went all the way to the end, delivering what they believe was a possibly lethal shock to a screaming stranger. 65%. 2 out of every 3 people in the room. So what actually happened here? It wasn't that these people were secretly cruel. Milgram identified a few forces working on them at once, and understanding them is the entire point of this video. Nobody was ever asked to jump straight to 450 volts. They started at 15, a tiny, harmless step, then 30, then 45. Each step was only slightly worse than the one before it, and having already taken the last step, refusing this one felt inconsistent, arbitrary. Where actually do you draw the line once you have already crossed 19 other lines just like it? This is how people end down somewhere they never would have agreed to at the start, not through one big decision, but through hundreds of small ones. Milgram's term for something specific. When we see ourselves as merely an instrument carrying out someone else's will, we stop feeling responsible for the outcome. The subjects were not thinking, I am hurting this man. They were thinking, the experimenter is having this man hurt, and I am the mechanism. That is not a loophole. That is a genuine psychological shift. Responsibility feels like it transfers upward to the authority, to the moment you accept their legitimacy. When Milgram reran the experiment in a run-down office building with no Yale affiliation, obedience dropped. When the experiment gave orders by phone instead of standing in the room, obedience dropped further. And when the teacher could see and touch the learner directly, it dropped again. Authority isn't just about who is given the order. It's about how legitimate, present, and official that authority feels in the moment. Milgram screamed out anyone with a story of violence and mental illness. These were, by every clinical measure, remarkable people. No one of them wanted to hurt no one. And many were visibly distressed, sweating, laughing nervously, begging the experimenter to let them stop and continue anyway. That's the actual funding. Not that cruel people exist. We already knew that. The funding is that decent people, under the right conditions, will do cruel things and still believe they were decent. This is no longer a 1960 curiosity. The same mechanism behind corporate scandals when entire departments knew about fraud and said nothing, because that is not my call to make. It's behind the defense soldiers give in war crimes tribunals, and the defense employees give when a manager asks them to do something they knew was wrong. I was just doing my job. It's behind every workplace where someone watched a colleague get mistreated and stay quiet because pushing back against a superior felt like a bigger risk than staying silent. The horrible part, almost everyone who hears this story is certain that they have been in the 35% who refused. The people in Milgram's actual share were certain of the exact same thing. They right up until they were not. The actual defense against this is not confidence that you're a good person. Milgram's data suggests good intentions barely predict anything here. The real defense is noticing the small step while you are still on them, asking at step 3 or 4, why would I think of step 40? Am I already on the road there? And is asking one more question, the one the obedient subjects mostly never go to ask out aloud. Who exactly gave this person authority over what I'm willing to do? And did I ever actually agree to this? 65% didn't refuse. The story worth remembering isn't about them. It's about the 35% who did, and what specifically they did differently in that room. That's is next episode. If this is the kind of thing you want to actually understand the psychology behind why people do what they do. Subscribe, because this channel is going to keep pulling apart real, documented cases like this one. And tell me in the comments, honestly, where do you think you have stopped?